Yeah. I don't know if you're familiar with the magic of trolls or not. Eh, Once there were multi-headed trolls, but these days only the shape-shifting, a one-headed trolls still exist. And they draw their power directly from the earth. In the dark of the moon each month, a troll must find a piece of granite to lean against, rest their foot against, have some contact with it, as otherwise their power will wane and their ability to live forever would go with it. This was no problem for trolls for many centuries. There was lots of open land, lots of rocks available, and their physical strength was great. And so they were able to maintain themselves in pretty good secrecy, looking like humans and having some human characteristics on their own. They mostly got along. They mostly did okay. But see, the biggest problem with a troll is that they're selfish, self-centered, and incredibly greedy. If a troll's fingernails were trimmable, they would have a 400-year supply of trimmed fingernails rather than let anything leave their possession. For this reason, it's very difficult for trolls to mate. One, they need to have a time at the dark of the moon where both of them can lie side by side. And to do that, they have to leave their current home to get together. And while they leave their current place to get together, anybody might come by and steal something from them. Modern life has made life for shape-shifting trolls extremely difficult. People can't just look the same year after year after year. They have to change places. They have to change communities. They have to change locations. And they have to have some way of transporting their wealth. For many years, they could actually take coins, but most places don't have gold coins anymore. And the problem with stocks and bonds is that somebody has a record of your owning them. So it's gotten to where there are very few shapeshifter trolls left around because they haven't been able to make it, and they haven't been able to reestablish themselves places. This particular troll, Amy, had built up a bit of a reputation in the community he had been living in. He was known as a rebel rouser, a person who always found the worst to see in anyone around and never hesitated to shift and talk and say, did you hear what this said to that person? Always making people feel worse about their neighbors. But he was getting too many years in his current shape. And he knew he had to find a way to leave his community and assume another identity and hopefully keep most of his wealth. That was his goal. Finally, an opportunity presented itself. A young man of their community, learned that his extremely wealthy, a well-known uncle in a far community had passed on and was going to leave everything to him. This was the troll's chance. As the young man said goodbye to his community and headed across country trying to get to his uncle's estate, the troll tagged along, offered to drive him, keep him company as he went. The dark of the moon would be the night after tomorrow. If they could delay their journey just enough to make him available that night, he could take the young man and inherit wealth and bring his wealth from his current community to him in tiny bits, over a course of years. And so they set off cross country, driving in a beautiful car. The young man babbling about the beautiful town of Pleasantville, where he would be staying, and the people who lived there. And his one and only time he had been in that community as a 4-year-old, and the only person he remembered of that time, and all of this conversation. And kept up his end of the conversation and talked about places and people and hey, and waited for his chance. When they stopped, the troll accidentally on purpose kicked a tire with his extremely strong and they had a flat that was a blowout and would be difficult to deal with. And they decided that the donuts, since they were in the middle of nowhere, was not a good choice. And so he said, well, we'll just walk up. It's only a few miles to the next town. We'll bring help back. And so they did. But that's not the truth. As the sun began to sink, the troll closer. Suddenly, he shot his hand out, grabbed the young man around the neck, pulled him to him, and said, come die, and marched him off into the hills. He found a large rock with a lion. Lie still. The young man was terrified. He didn't know what to do. He didn't know what to say. He didn't know what his fate would be, but it was too late. Full darkness came. The troll grabbed hold of him and slowly sucked all the life energy, memories, and appearances out of the young man until he was a group of pebbles on the ground. And the troll exactly like. Now, of course, he went to the community where they were expecting him. He introduced himself as if he were the young man. He had his ID, he knew the cultures, and he tried to settle in as a young, wealthy man in the city of Pleasantville. And Pleasantville earned its reputation. It was a town of many social activities. The four major churches held festivals once a month. So every quarter, a different church was holding a festival and inviting everyone in. And no one cared whether you happened to be from the Jewish temple, or the Catholic Church. None of that mattered to anyone there. Skin color didn't matter much. People were brown and white and those sorts of things, and they all seemed to get along pretty well. So life was moving pretty well, and he was getting himself settled in. His problem was that he knew this town was too friendly, too nice for him to tolerate for long. And so he began to look for ways to stir things up, to get people upset with each other. But it was hard. The people all had jobs, they had food to eat, everybody had shelter. Many of the things that divided other communities simply never took place. And so he walked about the town, talking to people pleasantly, looking at them and wondering, what can I do? They're all too old. There's got to be something. During one of the weekend festivals, he was walking along and he realized there was one family that was truly different. Not in any evil way, but this large multi-family group had a lot of people who were pale-skinned, freckled, red-haired, and some of them even had green eyes. That's, I will find a way to turn their neighbors against the odd-eyed, red-haired. Suddenly he began to speak. It started with simple whispers. They're so very different. They look so very different. They're not brown. They're white, but they don't look like their neighbors very much. And they seem to hang around together a lot. Somebody would say, well, they're all one extended family. They've been in the valley for hundreds of years, and this is how they've always lived. Doesn't that make them a little clannish, self-centered? Hey, in this town where everyone is supposed to get along all the time? The rumors began to take hold. The troll decided that, okay, now I've got people talking. How do I make myself their champion? and he began to scheme for ways to make himself ever more important to the town. Of course, he had the wealth that he inherited by killing the young man, and he had wealth hiding in assets. And so he began to build things and make things for the community, always with the intent of gathering people to control way of thinking. And he would mock people who shared too much. You can't afford to do that. Hang on to everything you have. If it needs doing, just let me know. I'll make sure it happens. And so his political power began to grow. After a long while of these undertakings, he finally convinced some of the people that the poor, green-eyed, red-haired people were truly evil. That there was something sinister about their behavior and their behavior amongst their clan, and people began to grumble. I know what to do about it, said the troll. We will find a way to exclude them from our festivals. If they're not there, no one will miss them. And if they're scheming, they can't carry it through. Some people grumbled, but most were too afraid and saw his wealth and power and the things he had done in the community. And so they let him do this for a while. And the poor McGillicuddy couldn't understand what had happened to the world around them. Their parents and their grandparents had lived here. These people had been their friends and neighbors. Their children had married into their families. What could be causing all of these problems? Kroll still had a problem. He had a problem in that this was a very lush, lone valley with very few rocks. And he still had to find a way to slip away a day or two before the dark of the moon every single month to put himself in contact with the earth powers that kept him looking like himself instead of a troll, and able to do the things he was doing. Someone else. This man, he's different. He gives away and gives away, and yet he seems to want so much in return. He wants everyone to think all of his ideas are the perfect ideas for anything that has to happen in our town. Some of us have seen him walking out toward the forest lands late at night. Why would he do such a thing? He doesn't hunt. Suspicions continue to grow. There was a brave young lad at the high school who thought, whatever this is, I need to know. And so he followed the troll at a distance, but a troll is a heavy-footed creature, and the boy was light on his feet, and the troll never noticed him behind him. When he got out to where the rock that he used was, he, of course, took off his clothes and lay down on the rock and began to absorb the power. What the troll didn't realize is that when he did that, his human form would melt, and lying on the rock would be the troll. The young man watched this happen and then hurried back, talking to people. He's not human. He's not real. All of this is some kind of magic. He told them what they'd seen. No one wanted to believe him. After all, he had built a library. He had added to the school. He had brought in entertainment. He had done so much for the community, and he was so generous and only expected utter adulation in return. But people, the course of several weeks, people began, what have we got ourselves into? And so, after watching the pattern for a couple of months, here in the dark of the moon, several of them went out to where the young man had been before. They watched the transformation take place. And as a human form drifted away, they rushed forward, pulling the troll away from the earth floor, tying him to a tree where he could not draw any more power, and waited to see what would happen. He begged, he pleaded, and he perished slowly over the next few days. People were sad that the generosity was gone, but there was no one to claim the treasure that was found there. Not just the family treasure that had been there all along, but apparently he had been bringing in a great deal of gold coins and other antiques and arts. So if you ever visit their temple, you'll see a statue of a young man who saved them, and next to them, pebbles. That was the troll that once.
Wow. Where did you get that, or did you make it
That
up?
is my creation. It came out of the workshop that I went up to in Tacoma, the National Storytelling Conference. And there was a story about a shape-shifting troll. And I actually started off as a political mockery of a certain politician currently in our
pick up
lives.
on that.
Yeah.
We're hoping for the best.
But yeah, so I created this, and tonight was the first time I
It's
actually
great.
tried to tell it.
It's great.
It's a great story.
You got it.
All right.
Wow.
I can't remember what I did last week. This guy can remember a story.
I know.
14 minutes. I mean,
I
it's
know.
insane. Like,
Well, you know, I don't memorize
Was he freestyle that?
them. Yes, somewhat. It's the first time I've told it, so I'm not sure. Maybe I'll have to go back and listen to it online.
Right, you can.
I go from key event to key event and fill in the verbiage around it. So if I told it again right now, I could not tell it the way I just told it. It wouldn't come out that way. And if it did, it'd sound memorized, and it wouldn't sound real.
From key event to key event, meaning literally in the
In
here
the-
and now. No, I know what you mean by
Yeah.
key event, but I'm just saying literally if you remember the 12 key events, for example, you would just freestyle the
Freestyle the record,
connecting
yeah.
part.
And I have stories I've been telling for, I don't know, whenever 1972 was, 2 years, how many years that
10
was?
years ago.
Yeah.
50
Not so long.
Shut up.
From 1972 to currently, and they never come out exactly the same way twice. I mean, how many times you guys heard me tell the 12 Horned Witches or Christmas stories that I tell?
Yeah.
Never the same way twice.
Well, they're close.
Yeah.
It never sounds like you're stretching for trying to remember what comes next. You never pause like that.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Hmm.
Good story. Good
Great story. You want to be next?
I
Glenn?
am. Yeah.
Now, do you need to move? Because usually,
Yeah, I can't sit.
yeah. So
And I'm
let's
swinging. Yeah, no, I can't.
let's have you stand here. We'll put the computer here,
Yep.
and you talk to the computer.
I can do that.
Ron, is Ron still there? Yeah. He's still there.
Did we gain?
No, Nick still hasn't come. So stand where you will see yourself.
Oh, see myself, not something I want to do. All right. I can see myself, yeah. So we're gonna travel east from Pleasantville, and we're gonna journey to Prescott, or as the locals say. Do you know how the locals say it? I would have thought you guys would have known it. Prescott, like biscuit, which I can't stand the pronunciation. But so we're gonna travel and journey about 6 hours east. And this is a true story. And it's one that just happened to me within the last couple weeks. So I've decided to write an essay about it. It finishes my new book, Compound Wealth, which is coming out in a few weeks. And the title of the story, I know we're not writing titles, but the title of the story is The Whole That Is Left in One. So think about that for a minute, because
How do you spell whole?
HOLE.
Oh.
So it's the whole that is left in one. It's synonymous with golf because golf plays such an integral part of my story. but I was trying to juxtapose the meaning, and you'll get it as I go along. Um, is everybody familiar with golf?
Mhm.
Yeah. Have anybody
Are
played?
you?
Sarah, have you played golf? Yes.
Golf.
Golf.
People chase a little ball and.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, yes.
Put it in there.
Oh, yeah, I know what's golf.
And you've heard of Tiger Woods?
Sorry?
Tiger Woods, the golfer?
No, I don't know.
Okay, but you do know golf?
Yeah.
Okay. And everyone else knows golf.
I know Tiger Woods.
We know Tiger Woods. Okay.
That's because we're old enough, 'cause I think.
Yeah, we're
Maybe young people. would
Yeah,
know
that's
that.
Tiger who? That's right. So my journey started off about 3 years ago, a little more than 3 years ago. And I left Claremont and I traveled 7 hours, 6, 7 hours. And oftentimes, as I came back and forth from Prescott to Claremont, I would take the back mountain roads. And when you drive out to Arizona, you can drive as you're heading towards Phoenix, you take a left off of Highway 60 and it goes off into the mountains, and it's kind of majestic. It travels way up into the mountains, very twisty and turny, and goes for a long while. And you finally arrive, and you climb about 6,000 feet, almost 7,000 feet actually. And you finally get to the top. And as you come out of the Prescott Forest, you land in the town of Prescott, in the village area. And it's like a place that time has forgotten. And obviously they settled Prescott back in the 1800s. I went there to build my real estate fortune. And my father actually moved to Prescott. My father now has dementia. And my brother has lived in Prescott now for 20 years. So it certainly has some meaning for me. And way down a road called Williamson Valley. This is a road that I would take every day for probably over a year. It's about a 15-mile journey down Williamson Valley. And when you get down at the end of Williamson Valley, very open area, you come to a place called Talking. And Talking Rock is famous for its golf course, which is what got me there. In fact, the golf course at Talking Rock is so dynamic, they consider it a PGA level golf course. It was designed by a PGA pro. And so it's quite an evolved golf course. So I had been in Prescott now for a couple of years, and long story short, had designed these homes and built them and had left. And I've been back now for about a year. And a couple weeks ago, this story started off with a simple phone call. And the gentleman on the other end of the phone, his voice seemed friendly. He seemed young, mid-30s-ish. And he simply said, "My name is Nate, and I'm calling about your houses." And when I first took the phone call from Nate, ironically enough, I was walking through the Claremont colleges. It's my favorite place to walk. And he inquired about these houses out at Talking Rock. I didn't know anything about Nate. I didn't ask him his last name. I didn't ask him any details about who he was. He simply was a person calling on my properties. And I spoke with Nate for a little while and told him, you know, I've kind of washed my hands of it. It is what it is. The backstory to it is we've been in and out of escrow probably 4 times. So I'm kind of emotionally over it. And so I didn't take his phone call very serious, the first call. The first call turned into, a few days later, a second phone call. Then it turned into more text messages back and forth. And I still didn't know anything about Nate. I just knew that there was a friendly young man on the other end of the phone that kept inquiring about the whole homes at Talking Rock. And they're sitting so close to that golf course, and it's a beautiful place. And so the more I talked to Nate, the more I got into the history of the town. And apparently he's not from there. He's from Scottsdale, Phoenix area. And I didn't, again, I still didn't find out much about him, but he just kept after it. And gave me different offers, and I kept trying to tell him the history of the drama that I've gone through out there with these houses. And then several more days, more conversations went by, and that's how real estate is when you have a development. Somebody's inquiring. It can be a very emotional roller coaster of multiple phone calls over multiple days, and you're trying to figure out who this person is until finally, after about 10 days, and I made sure during these phone calls that I was very clear with Nate. We've fallen out of escrow several times. I've had a lot of time wasted. I'm kind of just emotionally detached from all of this. I'm back in my hometown. I'm busy writing books and speaking, and I'm done with it. But he just kept acting. So you finally emotionally let your wall down and you relent and you try to connect with somebody. And so finally, our last phone call was he put an offer on the table. It was a significant amount of money. I've built a couple of homes, so he wanted to buy both, which I thought was pretty adventurous. And the total bill would be more than $2 million. So it's a lot of money that we're talking about. And so that means there's a lot of emotion. And so the weekend went by, and knowing humans like I know them, humans tend to change their mind quite a bit. Humans, you just never know. So as we were, and let me back up, there's a lot of people involved, not just myself. There's some of my investors, my construction lender. There's a lot of maneuvering I have to do behind the scenes. So when somebody's coming to offer something, as he was, I have to get a lot of other people involved. It wasn't just myself. So you build up the anticipation and the emotion, and then the drama starts to build because you're getting a consensus with other investors to take this offer. And so there's a lot behind that. There's still a beautiful golf course to think about. And so I had asked Nate, I said, have you been in the houses? Yes, I've been to the houses. Because I love the golf course there. It's amazing. Again, I still don't know anything about him. And so in our final phone call, I checked in with him. A couple of days had gone by, and so I checked in with him one final time. Said, hey, we're ready to open up escrow. We were able to get some of concessions from some of my investors so we can take less money for your offer. I was able to line all this up. Are you ready to go? And after multiple days and multiple phone calls, Nate calls me back and he says, Glenn, I'm really sorry. My wife has kept me up all night last night. She's worried sick. She feels like I'm overextending myself. She's scared and in a lot of fear, and I'm going to have to back out. And I about fell out of my chair in my office. And what washed over me was a tremendous amount of anger because I spent a lot of time letting him know that we've been down this road and down this road. A lot of other people have done this, and I'm moving on. I'm writing my books right now. I'm focused, and now you're bringing me back, and multiple phone calls with multiple check-ins. So to say that I was furious is probably an understatement. I'm a pretty emotional person, I'm sure, as you guys may already figured out. So I was super angry. And a friend of mine happened to call me right after that, and I kind of blew my lid for about 10 minutes and I was just in shock. And then something happened that washed over me. I had an epiphany, right? I got curious for a minute. I allowed my anger to just kind of leave my body and leave my mind. And I looked he had sent me his name the day before because I needed his name and his email address to be able to open up escrow. So I got curious. I said, who the hell would waste this much time and draw this much emotion, and so on and so on. So I punched his name into Google. And what popped up was a little, I wouldn't say it's life-changing, but it stopped me dead in my tracks and inspired me to stand up here and share this story. Turns out Nate is Nathan Lashley. And Nathan Lashley is a PGA Tour golf professional. He's a pro. And that explains how he found Talking Rock, because it's such a beautiful golf course that's a PGA level golf course that would attract a pro. So I punched his name into Wikipedia. All this bio put up on Nathan. And I was still mad, but I'm reading, and this was the teachable moment that was illuminated for me. As I read his bio, it turns out that I was right. He's 41 years old. I guess 39, but he's 41 years old, so he's young. And when Nate was just starting out his life, he was 21 years old. He went to the University of Arizona. And he's from the Midwest. And this explains why he's always so polite on the phone with me. He's from the Midwest, not an LA guy like me. And, but there, as I read his bio, was that when he was 21, his father and his mother and his girlfriend got on their parents' plane. And Nate was at a golf tournament when he was 21. And the parents and the girlfriend had flown to see him. And I'm sure you can imagine what I'm about to share. On the way back from that, his father, his mother, and his girlfriend were killed in the plane crash. And the moment I read that, I got chills down my back, and the anger just washed out of my body. And what washed over me was empathy and compassion. It was no longer about selling a house. And it was about his life in golf. But what unspeakable tragedy, trauma that he had been through. And the ironic thing is, we don't know this when we're talking to another human being. We don't know these backstories. We don't know what someone's been through. We don't know the journey that they've been on. And as I sat there and just kind of looked at Wikipedia and read the bio, and I took a deep breath, I was happy that the anger washed away from me. And so I reached out and I sent him a text. I just said, you know, and let me preface that. I remember when I was talking to him, I was trying to educate him on values, and I could tell that he wanted to rush off the phone. And I'm pretty intuitive. He probably felt pretty embarrassed that he had to call me up. And to his credit, as a good Midwestern boy, he actually called me. He didn't send me a text. But he probably felt really embarrassed that he had to back out of the deal. So he wanted to get off the phone quickly, I could tell. So I just let him go. But once I read this, it just stopped me dead in my tracks. And it reminded me, and it inspired the essay, that, you know, we're on this journey of life, and it's not about the houses and the money. It's about the people in our lives. It's about love. I think that's the meaning to life, is love. And it washed over me that that's the essence. And I got that from just feeling his pain. And so I reached back out to him in the text and I said, hey, Nathan, no hard feelings. I first asked him, though, before I said that, I said, are you Nathan Lashley, the golf pro? He says, yes. And I didn't want to make him feel like I was now suddenly talking to him because he was a golf pro. So I just said, I read your bio. You have a lot to be proud of in your golfing career. You've been through a tremendous amount of loss, and I can empathize. So too have I. And you always have a friend in me. So no hard feelings about the house, and I'm sorry for your loss. And it made me realize that it's the whole that is left in one when we lose people that we love. And it was a real reminder about the essence of life, even when we get caught up in chasing that little golf ball.
Thank you, thank you. That was a great story. We've lost Ron. So I'm gonna do something much different. Does anybody else have a story? Do you have a story?
I have a story, but I want to hear what you have to do.
Yeah, I think you should go first.
You think?
Yeah. I think. So can you
I'd rather.
stand up? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Make sure you can see yourself.
I can see myself more than I want.
Yes.
Um, there once was a mother, a foolish mother, and she had a foolish daughter. And it's hard to say who was the more foolish. But one day the mother woke up and she set to making 5 apple pies. 5 apples, right? She set them on the pantry to cool when she was finished. And she gathered herself together and went out to do some shopping. Her foolish daughter had been smelling those pies. The aroma wafted through the house. She was slavering to get at those pies. She went into the pantry and she just had to take one little taste out of it. And she finished that pie and went on to the next and the next. She was just licking her fingers from the 5th pie when her mother came in. And you can understand, she blew her stack. She slapped her here, she slapped her there. When the girl started bawling, she said, "Oh, what a stupid girl. What a glutton of a daughter I have. Oh, God." And she stomped out of the house, yelling and yelling, repeating, "Oh, Lord, what a girl I've got, what a glutton I've got." And then she finally calmed down and was ready to turn around and go back in. But when she turned, there was a huge black stallion with silver bells and fancy gear. And on top of the stallion was the king. Oh, she was very, oh, she gave a curtsy and said, "Oh, sorry, I'm sorry, Your Majesty, I didn't see you there." And he said, "Well, never mind about that. I heard you say something about your daughter, and I didn't quite get it. Would you mind repeating it?" Well, there was no way she was going to repeat what she had said. So she thought real quick and said, "Oh, yes, I was just saying my daughter is such a fine spinner. She has just spun 5 skeins of flax in one day." "Well," said the king, "that's quite amazing, quite amazing. Bring her out, let's have a look at her." So she went in and got her daughter and came out. And she came out blushing rather prettily, I must say. The king looked her over and over. And then he said, "Well, she seems a fair lass, an honest lass. And she's certainly comely. And most important of all, she's good with her hands. I've been looking for a wife." Gasped. He said, "I think that she would be a good wife for me." They were just astounded at the thought. He said, "She could come with me today. There's no reason to wait. We could have our wedding tomorrow, and she would live every day for the next 11 months with the life of royalty and the queen, as my queen. But there's one catch. At the end of those 11 months, in the 12th month, every single day she has to spin 5 skeins of flax." The mother and the daughter talked. Well, maybe it was foolishness or maybe it was optimism, but the mother thought she'd love to see her daughter with fine clothes and nice jewels, and she'd like to be the queen mother. So they went in the house and they gathered her things. The girl didn't have anything to say about it, but she could hardly see past the end of her nose, so I think she would probably have gone with it if she could. And off they went. The next day they had this lavish wedding. There were emperors there, there were kings there, there were people from all over. And there was wine flowing and food. And every day after that, she lived the life of a queen. She got so used to it, she could hardly remember she was born a peasant. She got more plump and more pleasant. And then after the 11th month, the king said, "Come with me, dear." He took her up a winding path, staircase, to a room she'd never seen before. And in there was a huge brush basket full of flax. And he said, every day you will need to be spinning 5 skeins of flax. And at night, finish it before dark, and then come downstairs and we'll have a bite to eat. We'll have some dancing and some fun. She said, but what if I can't get it done? Oh, well, then I will have to get my executioner and cut off your head. And with that, he walked out the door, turned up and left her in there. She was bawling, or she was crying. There was just a stool in there, a wooden stool, a wooden spinner. What's it called?
Spinning wheel.
Spinning wheel, thank you. And her bawling on that stool. And then she heard a rustling. It could have been a mouse or maybe even a rat. She looked over. It wasn't either one. It was a non-human. It had a long, stringy tail. It was only about knee high. And he had an old, wizened face. She said, oh. He said, what are you crying about? She said, oh. And she told him the whole story about the king and the pies and how her life was off the edge. And she was queen yesterday, but now she's. And he said, no problem. I can spin the flax for you. I can do 5 of them every single day. But she had been raised by her mother, so she knew not to put the gift horse in the mouth without asking questions. And she said, but thank you, sir. I appreciate it very much, sir. But what will I owe you for this? And he said, perhaps nothing, unless you can guess my name. And then I won't take you. So there were 30 days ahead, 5 times a day, 3 times a day. She was going to get to guess his name. He was going to come to 5 skit. So she agreed to it. And he came and started working on the flax, spinning and spinning, and told her to sit on the stool and go to sleep. And she did. 29 days she did. And every day she guessed a name. Was it William? No. Was it Edward? No. Was it Sam? No. And then he'd leave every day. 3 more names. And now it was the last day. And she was very, very worried. The night before, the king had taken her down. They had more eating and more dancing, and he held her on his lap, and he was in such a good mood. He started laughing, and she practically fell off his lap. He was feeding her tidbits, and telling her palace secrets that she'd never told her. And then she said, what are you laughing at, sire? And he said, oh, today I went out with my men and we were out hunting and I heard this funny sound and I went over and down in this chalk pit, there was this creature. It wasn't a mouse, it wasn't a rat, it had a long, skinny, dirty tail, and it was singing. Very excited, very still. He said, what was he singing? Well, let me get it right. Let me make sure I know what it is. Blam, blam, blam. Tom Tit Tam is my name. She was so excited. So the next day, the little imp came and did all of the flax, and she had 3 chances to name his name. He was starting to reach his hands out to grab at her skirts and pull on them, and she said, is your name Edward? No. Is it Peter? No. And she thought very carefully. Tom Tit Top. Is that your name? And he got so mad, he spun in a circle, he disappeared. And that's the story.
Where did you get that?
This book right here, my husband gave it for my birthday, English Fairy Tale and Legends.
Show it.
English Fairy Tale and Legends.
All right. Do you have a story?
I do not.
Okay. Do you have a story? Do you have a story? Okay, so would you sit here? And I'm gonna sit there. And I'm gonna do something very, very different.
All right.
It comes off, okay. So first thing, what I need to do is I need to.
Should I get out of the picture?
No. Here we go.
Well, just go.
I can make this fast.
Look at that.
Okay,
What lake is it?
Oh, that's you on the lake?
this is me on Sunday afternoon, what, 2 days ago.
Where is it?
So
Can you see? Let's switch spots so you can see better.
let me put it out further.
How high are you?
These are glaciers up here, right?
So, yes, so
That's cold.
I am standing in front of Sam Mac Lake. Elevation 11,793 feet.
Okay.
And on May 21st, I had surgery. Double hernia surgery. And it was a miracle that I got the surgery scheduled less than 2 weeks after going to see my doctor to verify that I had it. And he told me I could not go on the trip in the Sierras in August with that hernia,
Oh, no.
that it would be too dangerous. And I said, this is very important to me. Is there any chance that we can get this surgery done quickly so that I can recover and then start to train for the hike? Because the hike to our base camp is 8 miles long and 3,000 feet of climbing to 10,850. And we spend 5 nights sleeping at 10,850 feet elevation, and then do day hikes during the day. And there are 2 big day hikes. One of them is to the Palisade Glacier, which is the largest glacier in the Sierra Nevadas and is located on the left. You know, you guys can see, the Zoom recording won't. And here's another glacier that is the Thunderbolt Glacier, because this peak is called Thunderbolt and it's above 14,000 feet high. So the highlight of the 5 days up there is to do those 2 hikes. The other hikes are not as difficult, but we're relatively speaking, because they're done at above 11,000 feet elevation.
The highlight is to stay alive.
And as I get older, it takes more time and preparation for my body to be able to hike at that elevation. And here I was getting the surgery on May 21st. It was a miracle that it was scheduled at all, because I went in to see the doctor on, let's see, that was a Wednesday. It would have been
Next day.
May 8th. I went in to see my doctor, and the surgery was done on May 21st. That's a miracle in
that is-
itself.
That is an absolute.
And the way it happened was, I have a really nice doctor. This is with Kaiser.
It's a miracle.
And I told him, well, he knew how important it was. I had shown him the photo of me in that same place the year before, and he knew hiking was important to me. So he had his nurse make the call to schedule a surgery consult. And it was a Wednesday I went, and the next Tuesday was my appointment. And I wore a hiking shirt with a picture of Bear Paw High Sierra Camp to impress upon the surgeon how committed I was to hiking. And it was a very young surgeon, and luckily, he likes to hike.
Oh, here we go. Of course.
In fact, he had hiked to the top of Mount Baldy several times in the last couple of years. And so he was sympathetic to my cause. And when I told him, if I can't get this scheduled quickly, I'll get the surgery done after my hike up into the Sierras. And he said, no, you won't. That's dangerous. You cannot be in the wilderness with a hernia as serious as yours. It's not safe. And then he said, I have a full schedule for surgeries. I have 6 people on the waiting list. But just before you came in, I got a cancellation for next Tuesday. Can you make it? And I said, yes. And so the surgery was on May 21st. For 6 weeks, I had to do nothing. So not only was I not training, I was going backwards. And at my age, you stay inactive for 6 weeks and you start to lose muscle mass. And it takes a lot of strength to do that kind of hiking. And so that left me 5 weeks to get ready. And I wasn't sure I could do it, but I wanted to try. But the other thing is I had a complication after surgery, and I had an antibiotic prescribed, and the antibiotic side effects were tendonitis and tendon rupture, especially in older people who have had tendonitis in the past. And the effects can last for a whole month after you stop taking the antibiotic, and the effects can be permanent.
Oh,
So, needless to say, when I was given the okay by the surgeon to begin doing physical activity, I started very slowly. I didn't want to ruin my tendons. And then there's this fire in Lytle Creek, and they close all the trails in the mountains close to me. And I wasn't sure I was going to get any elevation climbing, but they made an exception for the Mount Baldy Resort, and I could hike to one mountaintop, 8,550 feet. I did it 4 times in 2 weeks, crossed my fingers, got in the car, and drove up there. The hike up was brutal. I was gasping for air. My legs were as heavy as, like they were lead weights. And I know when I train for these things, Chris and my daughter say, why do you torture yourself so? And the reason is that picture. The exhilaration of the outdoors in a beautiful setting and accomplishing a goal is why I do that.
I'm just glad you're alive.
Yeah, really.
I'm thankful.
And so healthy.
And that you got
So I have a
healthy, yeah.
question for you.
Well, and
Is he a
there
pig
were
bagger?
I said there were 2 hikes. I went on the Palisade Glacier hike. I got 3/4 of the way there, and I said, I can't do this. I was up at 11,800 feet, but there was another 600 feet to go to 12,400 to see the glacier. And the trail stopped there, and then it was boulder. You had to climb over boulders to get there. And I said, I can't do this. I don't have the strength. But then 2 days later, I agreed to take a group up to Sam Mac Lake because there was no trail, and they needed someone to take them. And I had been there 3 times before. And I wasn't sure I was going to be able to do it, but as you can tell from the picture, I did. And it was exhilarating. Thank you for
Great.
Good story. I'm glad you're safe. I'm sorry I got to run.
Yeah, go ahead,
go ahead.
Thank you for sharing. Nice to meet you. Get some sleep.
I'm gonna stop the share. Oh, can I stop the share? There we go.
See you, man.
So, yeah, thanks for coming, Glenn.
Are
And
we back on our normal
great
time?
story.
Thank you.
Yeah, it'll be second Tuesday, and I'll get back to you about your proposal.
Okay. Oh, and real quick, I forgot to ask, how many holes in one do you think Tiger Woods has had in his career?
3,
20.
20.
Whoa.
seriously?
That's something.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna
You got it.
stop the recording.
Like,